Hello, folks. I'm your host, Craig T. Stewart, and I'm here with
Jeff Mayhew.
And this is another episode of What the Book. Hey, Jeff, what's the book?
On quality? Oh, wait, no.
No.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Okay, now...
An inquiry into values.
Oh, so that's got to be a bit philosophical of a statement or highly pragmatic, right?
I don't know. I think it might be a little subjective.
Huh. Is that your answer from last month, too? Because that's the exact same line. Folks, go back and watch the Mere Christianity. I did not change that line because it applied. So you said something about motorcycle maintenance and Zen, right?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that this book was about a guy who sat in a sand garden and used his motorcycle to, create images in it.
That's
right?
what my nephew does. Maybe we should read the book synopsis to figure out what this book's about before we talk about it for like 45 minutes to an hour.
That's a good idea. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance recounts a motorcycle journey across America with a man and his son. As they travel, the narrator delves into memories of their earlier self, known as Phaedrus, who pursued the concept of quality to the point of insanity. This personal account intertwines with profound questions about the essence of reality and human perception.
Yep. And at its core, the narrative presents quality with a capital Q as the fundamental principle underlying all of existence. Pirsig contrasts the analytical classical mindset, reason, that we use in Western society, born from ancient Greece, with this holistic or romantic viewpoint in the hopes of revealing their shortcomings. His ultimate proposal integrates both perspectives, leading to a more complete and mindful way to engage the world.
So what do you think about the book?
What did I think about the book? And I know you're gonna tear my head off a little bit, but I understand the existence and the reason for the first 18 chapters, but I really didn't start getting into the book until about chapter 18. Like once we started learning a lot more about Phaedrus and making the connection that he's one and the same to the narrator. And also, that's when the philosophical stuff started coming in. So that's
I don't know. I kind of figured the Phaedrus thing out a little bit earlier than that, but okay. Ask me what I think about the book. Come on, ask me. I'm so excited.
Now I don't want to ask. What do you think about the book?
Okay, so I loved the book, but I was sometimes bored by the book. But the book was pretty amazing, yet it was a little incomplete. And I wonder why it's not a movie. I was wondering that as I was reading this book. I think I had this great movie in my head, and I think the way that it shifts stories so well, and I think it would be actually pretty... Are you looking up to see if it's a movie? Is it a movie?
No. I thought there was a movie, maybe not.
Well, anyways, it should be a movie. And look, I think this book is worth the read, definitely. But I would, like I said, I would cut some of the stuff, here and there. Like if I was going to make a movie, a little bit of the internal chatter might go away. But otherwise, I think it's really interesting. It made me think. It made me feel. It made me agree with it and disagree with it, which I think is a really it made me like and dislike the characters.
Which is good character building.
Right. And I cried at the end. So, like a baby at Bob Evans eating breakfast. So, wasn't expecting that, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, but thank you. I appreciate
Biscuits and gravy?
I actually just banana bread and coffee.
Okay. Crying like a baby at Bob Evans. Folks, let us know in the chat if you have ever seen a baby cry at Bob Evans, and if so, if they were wearing flannel. Comment sections down below. I want to hear from you. Before we jump into the questions, themes from the book, I'll just list the 4 high off the reel. There's a little bit more explanation in the Substack, or I guess just in the Substack if folks want to get a little bit more, but we're probably going to talk about the themes throughout the podcast. So their quality, duality, identity, and presence, all of which is required for maintenance, Zen, and philosophy. Anyway, you got a question you want to ask, Jeff?
Yeah. So before I ask my question, I want to say something. Sorry to the viewers for laughing through the synopsis, but it's Craig's fault. He always tries to make me say things wrong, and he writes it in a way that just makes me say things wrong. So I just powered through. And I hope, Craig, you don't cut out Alice, because Alice is my friend, and our friends out there want to hear Alice talk just as much as you, probably more than you, but it's okay.
Okay. What is
All right, first question.
important is when you say Phaedrus, that is the proper way to say it. That is not how you
Phaedrus.
read it the entire time, and you told me so. I'm not trying to trip you up on this one. Last month was a one-off, but now I'm going to make it a thing.
No, but I've read the first paragraph because of the second paragraph.
You can't say the word contrast at
I can.
8:30 p.m. It's fine.
It's just the way that those words go together.
There's lots going on in Virginia. Y'all don't know how districts work.
Didn't you learn to write from Phaedrus? Like, those words don't. Where's the dialect or the rhetoric here?
We don't need subjects or objects. Those aren't relevant.
What
is relevant is I'm right.
All right. Speaking of, let's get to the first question. What does the narrator mean by calling scientific laws ghost, and how does this prepare the ground for quality?
So this is one of those where I agree with Phaedrus, because like gravity, time, things like that, these are constructs that we as a society, or science on behalf of us as society, have created to explain natural phenomena. It's not to say that there isn't such a thing as time, or isn't such a thing as gravity, in my point of view, but that the way we approach it is a construct so we can understand the world, and we'll change it over time. There's currently, based on like quantum mechanics and everything, where we're changing how we view time and gravity, especially. Whether the immutable laws that define them currently are going to remain immutable, I don't know. But what I do know is that I agree with Phaedrus, and if we can just start throwing out things that we think are objectively true, because they're just constructs that we've created, in a sense, and then we can dive into the romantic viewpoint, the idea of quality as the deeper value behind all concepts. And we may talk, and for the viewers, like, we may talk about quality as if you've read the book. There's a link. You might want to go read the book, because it's going to be hard, especially for me, given everything going on in my life. And I'm sure Jeff's been super busy as well. But like, when we say quality, I think a good way to look at it is a belief system that doesn't rely on objective reality. It relies on like a belief of something deeper. So quality comes from before Socrates, from before Aristotle. And these folks basically destroyed it in a way. And I totally lost my train of thought there. I'm trying to
So,
explain it.
okay.
Jeff, maybe you have a better vision.
All right. So this concept of quality that he speaks of, he's a professor at a school and he's teaching a class, and he's obsessed with quality. And he assigns his class to define quality, and he has this whole back and forth with the class, this whole thing that goes on that basically says it's not really definable, but you know it when you see it. I kind of thought a little bit of Justice Clarence Thomas when he was doing the Supreme Court ruling about, I believe it was pornography. He was like, you know, pornography when you see it, right? Like, what is quality? Well, you know it when you see it. you know
Yeah.
it when you have it. You know it when you don't have it, right? Sometimes
It's like a
and
feeling.
he talks about that a little.
It's a feeling. It's not like a fact.
It's a objective, subjective thing that is everything and it is nothing. And it's basically life. You know, he's trying to quantify life in this concept of quality, right? Is like, what is, you know, at the core, somewhere in somebody's line of thought when it comes to quality is, what is a quality life? What does that mean for me? What does it mean for you? All these things. And anyways, you know, back to the laws of nature. You were talking about
Gravity and time being made up.
yeah, I mean, they're not made up. We see them, right? When you drop a ball, when you drop an
we
apple,
see the effects of the apple
we see
falling.
the effects, and these are words and explanations that we have created to explain the things that we see, right? And sometimes the things that we see change when we learn more about them. You mentioned that with time and gravity and the way that, you know, science is progressing. It doesn't necessarily mean that the people in the past were wrong or that the laws or words or whatever was incorrect, that those things weren't true. But with more information, that truth, that perspective about what you see might change. You might explain it differently now. It's still the same thing it was. It hasn't changed. What you know about it has changed.
The apple still falls. How you explain that may change, whether it's due to this force of mass sucking everything in, or whether it's some electromagnetic mumbo jumbo that people think it is, or whether it's something else entirely, right? But what is true is that apple falls. We can feel it when it hits our head.
Right. And like, and what is the ghost that he's referring in this? Like, the ghost that he's talking about with this is what?
Reason, isn't it? Isn't the ghost like that classical ancient Greece logic that is rational to the end, but doesn't actually provide value? Well, it doesn't actually provide meaning to the thing. Like, gravity doesn't have meaning, but it has value.
But doesn't have quality.
Well, no, because it doesn't have meaning.
Well, you know, it was just a little bit of the joke with the quality, you know. If you haven't been paying attention, this is a long-running gag. I've been thinking about quality all week. I tweeted out. Nobody responds. I've been waiting for Craig to see it and go, hey, I've been thinking about quality too.
My feed's all messed up. I need to swipe over to the people I'm following, but like, you do not tweet near as much as some of the other people I'm following.
No, I don't tweet very much, but I do tweet about quality.
There's not a way for me to go, like, I always want to see whatever Jeff put. That's not an option in Twitter, in X, Twix.
It should be.
It should be. I can ask Grok to fix it for me, I'm sure. Why can't that? Anyway. Yeah, we were
Question me, Craig.
Yes, questions.
Question me,
Questions,
Craig.
comrades, questions. Wait, that's not what it was. There's also we also did a podcast. It was about Animal Farm, I believe. And there's lots of comrade statements in there. Highly recommend go back and listen to that one as well. Yes, questions.
All right, comrade.
I've got
questions
one for you.
about quality. Is it about quality?
It's about care.
Okay. So kind of, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe my answer will be quality.
If there's anyone that can tie it in, it's you. I believe in you, Jeff. How does the narrator's hands-on motorcycle care differ from his son and the couple that accompany them on this journey from Minnesota to California?
Well, it's pretty night and day. Well, first is the narrator, Phaedrus, right? Okay, Phaedrus. He sees the world in a classical way. Um, and this guy John, and I would say to a lesser extent his son. I don't necessarily. I'm not going to throw his son in with John because John's an adult, and I think his son is still trying to figure out who he is. So
Mm.
I'm just going to say his John. And John has a romantic way of looking at the world. And, you know, uh, Phaedrus describes this. And by the way, I think what's really brilliant about this book is the way that it translates back and forth between the different stories
The
that
stories
tell.
are woven together seamlessly. It is
They,
fantastic.
yeah, it's just it's just
Work
an
of
excellent
art.
piece of writing. Yeah, it really is. It really is. You could tell that this guy thought about quality. And so I just had to mention that. But anyways, back to the classical and the romantic. This romantic sees the world as it is, right? As what things do for us. Everything is a tool or an instrument for us to do what we want to do.
Hmm.
And the classical sees the world for what things are, their purpose, their underlying, what makes them tick, how they do the things that they do. And, he sees he sees his motorcycle as his responsibility to take care of. He tells this story about taking his bike to a mechanic once and the mechanic, sharding off a tippet that messed up his bike that he had to fix. And it's like, you don't really know who you're taking it to when you take it to some guy. They may or may
Yeah,
not
some
actually
kid
care
that
about
read the manual and is just following
and has
instructions.
no idea about quality.
Yeah.
No clue about quality. He's
Or
just
how to
there to get a
troubleshoot.
paycheck or how to troubleshoot. And so he has this very firm belief that motorcycle maintenance is important, especially if you're taking a cross country trip. There's so many things that could go wrong. You need to be prepared for them. You need to understand how your bike works in case you get stranded so you can get yourself out of these situations. And John just kind of thinks, I pay a lot of money for a really great bike, and I expect that bike to perform for what I paid for it. And if I have a problem, I will pay for somebody to fix it. And this is like a major divide in their relationship. How they see, like, there's not a ton of backstory here, but there's a little bit where you can tell there's tension around this subject. Phaedrus is kind of hesitant to bring it up, but he wants to talk to his friend about it. Like, this is a really important thing for Phaedrus. And John probably doesn't even, I think he kind of understands that it is really important to him, but he doesn't get it. Like, he doesn't understand the real importance for motorcycle maintenance.
Yeah.
And it's this conflict and this tension between the characters, which is really, I think, subtle but very revealing to who Phaedrus is.
Hmm.
And again, brilliant piece of writing, excellent character development. You can tell this is probably just a real story. He just probably wrote everything down that actually happened in his
I
life.
had to go back and look it up because I thought this was nonfiction. I'm like, there's no way this is nonfiction. Uh, my understanding is this is like a mix between real life experiences because the author was a philosopher or is a philosopher and or professor, and they had schizophrenia. So like there's a lot of this that probably is real, but it's not. Everything we see in the book is like partly true. It's like
Yeah.
it's like the Looming Tower or something like that, which dramatizes 9/11, for instance. It's close. You'll get a full picture of how things rolled out, but it's not exactly how things actually happened. And there's definitely things that were added or things that were changed. So like it it's not nonfiction, and I don't think it's fiction either. It's something in between. It's intertwined. That's what makes it a good piece of literature.
Yeah. And there's this tension that is between John and Phaedrus over this issue. And you mentioned in the question about his son, and I say that I'm kind of separate his son out of here, but I'll bring him back at this point, and I'll say that his dad definitely perceives his son as having a romantic view of the world, and it's really important to him that he has a classical view of the world. Um, and there's tension there as well. And so it's this is set up at the very beginning of the book, and this tension is pulled apart layer by layer as we get through the book. Although there's one layer that doesn't get pulled that I would be very interested in, and we can get to that maybe later.
Yep.
All right, let me question you, Craig. Are you ready for a second question?
Nope. Let's go for it.
Why does the classical romantic divide matter? How does quality resolve it?
Well, we've kind of actually talked about it a little bit. Like classical thinking um, does the analysis, right? The romantic does the feeling. Like
Like
you,
dialect
you,
and
you need
rhetoric.
both. Yes. You need both because you need the pre-intellectual awareness. You need that apple hitting your head to know that there's something that can be analyzed and pulled out of that. Without that pre-intellectual thing, there's no innovation, there's no creativity even. There's no, like, ability to reason. So you need both as a result, and that divide is whether it's pre or post-intellectual. And, uh, how does quality resolve it? It's the it's the awareness. Quality is the awareness, right?
I think quality's the balance of it.
The yeah,
So
the awareness that there needs to be balance.
so I this is something, this dialect and rhetoric, this analysis and emotion, right? Well, this is something that we have talked about over and over and over again on this podcast, and that is the balance between our reasonable self and our emotional self. Okay. And I think that there's a great story in here that the author tells about in a very brief amount of time where he's talking about working on his bike and turning a wrench. And like a good mechanic understands the feel of it. Okay. They feel that it's tight enough without over tightening it and screwing it up. Right. If you're a young mechanic or somebody new, you might not know. You might just strip the whole thing out.
Yeah.
Right.
Finger
If you're
tight.
completely inexperienced, well, no, over tighten.
Yeah,
Right. They
finger
over
tight,
tighten. Oh,
tight, and
I got
then, taut, or
right.
there's 3 different ones. He talks about them.
Right. Yes. Okay. And so I was thinking about this because I remember when I was a kid, my everybody used to tell me my dad was like a great backer upper. Okay. I know it's like a strange thing to be like really good at, but he worked on a farm and he's a mechanic and he would work on everybody's car and do all these things. And everybody would tell me how good my dad was backing out trailers, different things. And, working in the industry, like if somebody needed something backed up, they would call my dad. My dad would come and like back it up. And
Professional
um, you
backer
know,
upper.
professional backer upper, right? And so like he was teaching me how to do this when I was a kid, right? He was teaching me. And I've got the trailer on and he's like, "Well, normally you turn this way, but you got to turn this way. You get your trailer to cut that way." And like I can't remember the exact words that he used, but he goes, "You've got to kind of pay attention to what you're doing and that at some point you're going to lose sight of where you're going. And you've got to see it here.
Mhm.
You've got to feel it. You can feel how close you are.
Yeah.
You can feel it, right? And I've always taken that piece of advice with everything that I do. At some point, you take in as much information with something, and then you just kind of feel
That
it.
that is like the intuition, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like it's not the conscious intuition, it's the subconscious. So, like, your subconscious a lot of times makes connections that you don't realize it's making, and it starts to be something that you implement or do on a daily basis. Something like that is a great example, and riding a bike is also an example where it's a conscious thing until it becomes subconscious and you don't even have to think about it anymore. And that's just a way that your brain learns so it can then offload something that is high stress and highly taxing to do it in the background. And sometimes you have to be careful with that because then you start thinking you can multitask and you can't multitask. Your subconscious is really good at doing a very few things. One of them is keeping you alive. And the other one is like some repetitive task that you're working on. That's about it. So if you try to add more to it, it becomes problematic.
Right. Well, and I think there's a great book that I don't know if you've read, if you're out there and you find this interesting, is Thinking Fast and Slow by it's Daniel Kuthерman. I can't find the book. It's around here
Yeah,
somewhere.
it's still in my
Um,
audio. I've been meaning to finish it. It's a great book so
and
far.
and he talks about this system 1 and system 2,
Yep.
right? And one is the fast processor, one is the slow processor. It's the emotion. It's everything is the same, right? I say it's active, it's passive, it's rational, it's emotional. Like there's all these different things. It's this everything is the same, and it's finding a balance between these things. If we're going back to our question, where is quality found? It's found in a balance between the emotional and the reasonable because, and here's the key, you can't make new things without being emotional. You have to believe that that thing that you've never seen before that doesn't exist will exist with your consistency and your intensity.
Can you speak a little more on that?
I mean, I think of Edison, inventor, right? He's got to believe that he can make a light bulb before he can make a light bulb, right? He's got to understand all that information about the technology of the time and go, I could make light. I could make light. And I mean, I guess Tesla really, but
Tesla was the inventor. Edison was the one that's like, how can I make this scalable and safe?
right. Yes, I got my names wrong, but you understand the
They both
point,
applied
right?
the same concept.
You've got to believe it. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
believe it. Okay. And with that belief is typically rest on a foundation of analysis, right? Of information that you've already processed that nobody
Mm-hmm.
else might have, right? But you believe it. Nobody else believes you. And sometimes just using your analytical data isn't going to convince people to also believe in you. And in order to be successful, you need other people to believe in you. They had to get funding to make the light bulb. Right? They had to get funding.
They had to go through like 1,000 different iterations to find a combination that would last long enough to be sellable.
To be profitable.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not good enough to make a light bulb. Yeah, you made a light bulb, but it takes a lot of money to make and it only lasts for like 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's worthless. It's
good for a circus.
It's a party gag.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. But so that's what I mean. You got to believe it. You got to have emotion. You've got to have reason. They talk about this with the dialect and the rhetoric, right? Is you've got to be able, if you're going to sell an idea to a whole bunch of people, you've got to pull on their heartstrings. You've got to make them believe it too, because they've got to invest. They got to invest something. They got to invest their time. They got to invest their money. They got to invest their focus, right? And so,
yep. And the question is, do you have what it takes to do it?
Do you have the consistency? Do you have the intensity?
And do you have the willingness?
I think, yeah.
There's something about gumption that we've been touching on. So,
yes,
is there a question on gumptions?
Yeah, let me check this out. What are gumption traps, and how do they function as life lessons? But first, why don't you explain what gumption is, and then explain what gumption trap is for the reader out there or listener?
Gumption. So, like, it's been a hot minute since I've looked at the actual definition, but gumption is, do you have the go-getter attitude, the motivation, the willingness to go do something? Like,
do you have the intensity?
Yeah. It doesn't
Are you
necessarily have to be
fired up?
intensity, but like I guess a great example is like just this past month keeps raining. I have to go mow. Well, I don't have a problem mowing. That's not a gumption itself. That's not like a gumption trap itself. It's a thing that has to be done. The gumption trap is I only have one battery for this mower, and it only covers about a third to a half. And it takes forever to charge the battery, which means I have to go back and forth or find something else to do and come back to it. And it adds 10 minutes probably if I do it most efficiently. That becomes a gumption trap because I'm not going to pay, it's not actually my mower. So I'm not actually going to buy another battery or multiple batteries to make this work. So I'm basically gumption trapping myself. The way that it's approached in the book, they're essentially setbacks, like stuck screws or um, a washer that wears out and you have to go find a new one, which came up on the farm. That was an entertaining day. Um, just anything that becomes annoying when you're trying to do a thing, like take care of your motorcycle, and then it's like, oh, this washer needs replaced. Oh, this screw just doesn't want to come out right, or this the threads on this are getting stripped, and it just drains your desire and your motivation to do the thing that you set down to do. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to wait for my computer to update before I can write. Well, 10 minutes goes by and now I'm going to go do something else. I just
Yeah.
lost motivation to write at that point.
Well, I think this is I think this at first I love this idea of gumption. When I think of gumption, you know who I think about? I think of Tom Brady on the field. He's got gumption, right? That guy didn't look like an athlete, okay? He was taken in the 7th round. Nobody believed he was an athlete, but man, did he have gumption. And when he got his chance, he made you believe that they were going to win. And you know why? Because secretly in the background, he was doing all the work. He built a foundation of analysis, and when he got out on the field, he took that intensity here and he led his team to the freaking Super Bowl, man!
Multiple
Over and
times.
over and
Yeah.
over and over again. I'm
And
talking about his first year,
And
though.
it wasn't
But
just him.
that's gumption.
He inspired other people as well on his team to go forth, because it wasn't just a one-man team, right? It was a group
No,
of people that all bought into that same idea and moved it forward.
right. And I think I love this idea of gumption trap. I think this is something that people fall into all the time. And the example that you give is him working in his workshop and, talking about all the things that might set him back from working in his workshop. And I think this is something that you should think about for anything that, if you're an individual out there, what am I working on? How do I stay productive? And set yourself up for success, right? He talked about a little bit, he's kind of a neat mechanic. Everything's got its place and whatnot. But he also met another mechanic who was also a good mechanic, who was the type of guy whose stuff was everywhere because he's got like a photographic memory, right?
Yep.
And so, like, where's your happy place? Where do you feel comfortable, right? Do you need all your stuff in a certain place so you can stay focused? Once something's out of place, that might be a gumption trap for him, right? Because everything's got to have its order.
Oh, yeah.
And same thing for the guy that's got the photographic memory. If you go move his stuff, he's got no clue where it is, right? It doesn't even have a place to begin with.
I would like to point out, I have 2 tape measures, and I put them in the exact same place that I always put them, and I can only ever find one, and it's never where I put it. Same thing with razors when I'm trying to break down boxes. I've got 3. I just broke 1. I don't know where the other one is. I just found the one after doing and breaking down boxes the old-fashioned way. But you better believe I spent half an hour looking for that razor blade.
That was a gumption trap.
It was.
Because now you are
Yep.
doing something other than the thing that you want to
Yep.
do. And you might be doing it because you're frustrated, or
Yep.
you might be doing it because you're sad or angry or whatever. But
Yep.
that's the key, is the gumption trap takes your reasonable mind and shifts it into your emotional mind.
Mhm.
And your emotional mind is not as productive when it's angry and frustrated, right? It's productive when it's happy and focused, right? And that's why having your rational and your emotional lined up together makes you that's your gumption, is that rational and that emotional lined up, working in the same direction, partners in crime or virtue or whatever you want to call it, and they get things done.
That is a great summary of something I need to take to heart this week. Thank you.
You're welcome. Right here, ladies and gentlemen, on What the Book. We're solving problems.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Give me a question, Craig.
You want a question? Oh, yeah?
I want a question. Yeah, I do.
I don't know if I want to give you a question about tension or anything like that. Oh,
Oh,
was I making you tense?
uh,
Oh, okay. So how does tension with the narrator's son Chris reflect a deeper philosophical crisis?
oh, man. So, as you know, I already mentioned tension in this episode. We talked about tension between John and Phaedrus, who is the father. And Chris is his son, and there is some tension there as well because of this classical and romantic. But the real tension lies in the unspoken. Chris is deeply insecure about being a father. Or, excuse me, Phaedrus is deeply insecure about being a father. He suffered some psychotic break that makes him feel not like himself anymore.
Mm,
He's almost forgotten himself. At this, he kind of hates himself. At the end of the day, I think that's what I take away from this. And Chris has absorbed all of this from his father.
mm,
And he is struggling emotionally to comprehend the things that he sees, but he doesn't understand. And his father is harped on this classical versus romantic view of the world and teaching Chris to be independent, but he hasn't fulfilled Chris's basic desire to understand himself and love himself, right? And this comes from his father. He talks about this in almost complaining about Chris and saying how he mimics him. And he also has this egotist view of the world,
mhm.
right? And in these two ways, it's like, and I mean this in the nicest possible way out there for the viewers, but it's hard not to think of as a philosopher as some sort of egotist at some point in time.
You
You
have to
know,
be
like yeah, to think that you can think
in
and
such a way that is profound and keep a high quality of work with that ego. It's
right, and I think that there's two things to be said on this is one, I think if you're a philosopher, you don't really have a choice. You think that way because that's the way you think. You can't not think that way. That's who you are, and you have to believe that you are worthy of doing that in some way to continue to do it, or at least to express yourself in a way to become a professor, right? Like maybe you're that way, but you never actually become a professor. At some point, you believed you were a lot smarter than a lot of other people, like flat out, or you
Mhm.
had something profound to share with the world. And, you know, I think he resents himself and what he went through and what he did. And that's Phaedrus. And that is a burden that his son is carrying a lot, and it's very heavy on him. Um, let me see. I marked a couple pages here. So we stopped for a break and looked down below. Chris's spirits seem to be better now, but I'm afraid it's the ego thing again. Look how far we've come, he says. We've got a lot further to go. Later on, Chris shouts to hear his echo and throws rocks down to see where they fall. He's starting to get an almost cocky He's starting to get almost cocky, so I step up the equilibrium to where I breathe at a good, swift rate, about 1.5 times our former speed. This sobers him somewhat, and we keep climbing. And in this interaction with his son, and just for some backstory out there, if you've read it but you don't remember, is like leading up to this, Chris is having trouble going up the mountain. You know, he's he's very difficult in some situations, just being kind of obstinate about doing this thing. He's complaining. He's kind of depressed. And now in this moment, he's not depressed anymore. He's happy.
Yep.
He's excited. He's seen his progress and he
Yep.
feels
There's
he
payoff.
feels he feels growth. He feels good. He feels like he's done something of quality. Right? He's put in the work that his dad is stressing him. You've got to put in the
Mhm.
work to really understand quality. And in this moment, he is celebrating with his father. And his father's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Nah, don't get a fat head, kid. No, 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 no. No, you're not that good. I'm carrying half your stuff, okay? Like, I know he doesn't say it, and I can't remember if that was exactly before or after. I think it happened
It's
before,
around the
but
same time. Yeah, it was
it's around the
before,
same
I
time.
think.
And I just think this is the insecurity. This is the self-hatred that Phaedrus has for himself. And this is this is the real tension. The real tension is not between Phaedrus and Chris. The real tension is between Phaedrus and himself. And what you see in the relationship between Chris and Phaedrus is a reverberation, right? Whatever,
Yes.
like of that tension. So again, I
And
love this book, by the
and
way.
that tension is the romantic versus the reason. It's the rational control versus intuitive feeling or healing payoffs.
Think about it. Phaedrus is assuming his son's feelings.
Mhm.
Who do you think he's really thinking about?
Himself.
He's thinking about himself.
Yeah. We project what
But
we feel onto others all the time.
but he's not. And this is remember I mentioned there was a layer that didn't get peeled.
Mhm. Peel it.
What's the relationship between Phaedrus and his father? Who is Phaedrus's dad? Where is the insecurity and the tension that his father pushed onto him? And how did that shape Phaedrus to be the man that he is, that he now dislikes?
I don't have an answer. Do you have an answer?
No, but I just think it would be interesting. Is Pirsig still alive? Can we
I
interview him and ask some
I
questions?
think he is, yeah. Do I
Hold
still
on.
have it
No,
pulled
he
up?
died in 2017. It's right on the back of the book.
Oh. Oh,
You can
well.
see I
I've
did a
got a
lot of
2005
backstory.
copy.
Okay. Yeah, well,
I'm behind the times. Well, so, like, this all happened in the 60s. He had a psychotic breakdown in the early 70s, and he got remarried in the 80s, so it makes sense that he's that old and that this book is that old, and honestly, I thought it was a newer book. I didn't think it was quite as old as it actually is, and for the first chapter or 2, I'm like, "Wait, there's no, like, technology." He's talking about technology. There's no technology here. Like, what do you mean? There's not even payphones.
it's the 50th anniversary, is the copy that I've got.
Yep.
So that would
Yeah,
date it to at least 1976, right? No.
this copy
Yeah.
doesn't actually even come up when you search it on Amazon. I went to the direct link to find it because I'm like,
Hmm.
well, I want to link the copy that I know I have that is actually a right thing. And I didn't check with you if it was the same one, but like the actual story itself is the same. It's not translated like certain books like Crime and Punishment.
Why? Why do you have to bring up all those bad emotions? Ugh.
So you can be
Wow.
aware
You're gonna knock.
of the
Speaking of
quality of.
Speaking of, remember, okay, for the listeners out there who are following along, remember Crime and Punishment was the guy who was overly rational, okay,
And
who
he let his
committed
emotions carry
atrocities.
him away to murder and all other things. Was he rational? Or did he
He was mad.
rationalize himself out of the emotions?
Ooh, interesting. Maybe you'll have to go back and listen to that terrible podcast that we did on that terrible book.
What wasn't in that book, just to summarize, was balance and quality.
True that. It was not quality. Did I tell you I met somebody who said that was in their top 5 books of all time? And I was like, we can't be friends. I'm sorry, but you're now my sworn enemy.
Well, I won't say it then.
All right.
What happens during the mountain meeting with Phaedrus, and why is it the turning point? And I actually don't remember off the top of my head for the context here, but I think it's the narrator actually meeting previous Phaedrus. Like when the two come back together, and it's not like scattered memory.
You're talking about when they reach the summit of the mountain?
I believe it's when they reach the summit and like past Phaedrus merges with present.
Yeah, it's almost like, I mean, these two things happening kind of simultaneously is like it's this moment of zen, this moment of clarity, this moment where everything kind of falls in the line. Um, I mean, as as you mentioned, you kind of assume that Phaedrus is who Phaedrus is much earlier in the book. And this is the point of the book where it's kind of revealed. Um, like you said, they're no longer scattered memories. They're acknowledging one another.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's also a point where he kind of feels like he's starting to revert back to that state. Um, where he had this mental episode. Um, yeah, I would say that the book at this point gets more emotional as it goes along. Up to this point, I think, there is some emotion in the characters and the tension, but it's kind of like lighthearted. It's not really too heavy. There's some like moments, like I mentioned, with the sun on the mountain, but after this, you start to really see this. That tension that's reverberating from him to his son. You really see that it's really pushed them really far apart.
Mm.
And it kind of there's a moment that really guts you, or at least for
Mm.
me it did.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of a result of these things happening, you know?
Yeah. I I think that does a good job of summarizing it. You've answered the question.
Boom.
Your
Do I get a
reward
dollar?
is asking 2 questions.
Ooh. How does their arrival in California show a life lived with quality?
Um, Great question. I don't even remember what I jotted as my notes for an answer.
Wait, you took notes?
Well, I scattershot from my brain. I didn't take actual notes. I did at the end, and then I sent them through AI to tell me where I'm stupid, and it said, I think this is one of them, it said, "You're stupid." So that's why there's an M dash there that I don't remember putting. Um, how does their arrival in California show a life lived with quality? Because, like, there's no actual answers by the end of the journey. Like, for Phaedrus and what was the word, the Chautauquas? Is that what it was? Where he's kinda, like, thinking through in his head about
You're
all
asking me
these.
how to you hold on. You're asking me how to pronounce a word? For the listeners out
Yes.
there, they know that that was a stupid question that you just asked. You
Well,
shouldn't
you're
have asked me.
stupid. Maybe you need to up the quality, of your tongue.
Oh, man.
But, like, all those asides where he just like, you're getting the story out about the vacation, and then all of a sudden he's, like, in his own head thinking, and everyone sees around him, sees he's, like, in deep thought. I think they're called Chautauquas.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna bother finding it in my book, but, like, if I got it wrong, someone tell me I'm wrong in the comments below. I need to be told I'm wrong at least once a week, otherwise I go insane, like Phaedrus. But, yeah, like, he finds a lot of information, but there's no answers. There's no real conclusion, by the end of the journey from Minnesota to California other than they've arrived. And Phaedrus has a better understanding of the situation. His quality has increased, right? Because he now has that past and he's got the present and they've come together and he's recognizing where there's things in his life. He's aware of things in his life that aren't balanced and he's trying to find that balance. And so he kind of has that aha moment, if you will. And then the
Isn't
book
that the
ends.
answer? But isn't that the answer though? I think the whole point here is there is no easy answer to life. Okay? There's no easy answer to say you need to balance your reason and your emotion to this level. There's no exact mathematical formula that's going to allow you to be the perfect person. There's no singular answer that's going to solve all of your problems because life is a set of yes and no decisions, 0 and 1, but you make millions and millions and millions of them. And that depends on the direction and the path you take, right? And you can't harp on the ones that you did wrong. You have to keep trying to make the best decisions to move forward in the path that you believe that you're supposed to be on. And I think the answer at this is like there's that gut-wrenching scene between Chris and his dad when they're in California where his dad feels like he's going to go crazy again and he's like, I just might send you away. I might just send you away to go live with somebody else. I don't think we're ever going to see each other again. And man, that broke me
Mhm.
for, like, having to read that, because it's like I've never suffered a psychotic episode, but I feel amount of failure as a parent sometimes where I think maybe they'd just be better off with somebody else.
Yeah.
I would never say that to my kids, right? I wouldn't be like, "I wanna get rid of you." No, I don't wanna get rid of you. I feel like I'm failing you, right? I feel like I'm failing you. I'm trying really hard not to fail you, and I feel like I'm failing you. I've made this mistake. And for Phaedrus, he doesn't really remember this mistake. He's got this dream that he's having, which we find out was actual kind of reality. It was that
Mm.
moment. And it's this connection, this acknowledgement, this awareness of this thing that happened in this communication with his son that really, what you see is you see a difference in Chris almost immediately. It's like this weight was lifted off of his shoulders, right? And we don't really know what happens after that, right? Because, like you mentioned, the book ends. But I feel like
Mhm.
that was the answer. I feel like that is the conclusion that you're going for. And I think we tie this back into, he talks about the dualistic, view of the world, right?
Mhm.
And he has this dualistic view of the world, this classical and romantic, right? This is a dualist right here. And he also talks about the Trinity. And this is something that is in Christianity, understanding these three things that seem not to be able to comprehend, but they do comprehend.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of the point here. Is there, there's no singular answer. You have to trust what you see. You have to build a foundation of analysis. You got to believe in where you're going.
Yep.
You got to be consistent. And sometimes you need to have some intensity about yourself. And that's how you do it. And I think that's kind of what we learn in this segment in California, and I'm hopeful for their relationship. I wonder what it is. I think isn't there a sequel to this book?
You're the one that Googled it. You tell me.
No, I didn't Google it. No, there's On Quality is a book that he wrote. It was in the back of the book. But I don't know if there's a sequel to this book.
I don't think there's a sequel to the book
Mm,
itself because that would have been the life that he lived as he was writing this, in
possibly,
theory.
in theory. But anyways, that's what I'm thinking.
I
And
pick
and
up
and
what
it
you're
to
putting
be
down. Yeah.
I guess to tie it back to the question, because the question was about quality, and I can't believe that I skipped out on quality. I think quality is accepting the world for the way that it is and making the best of it. That, like, back to my question at the beginning, what is a quality life? At the end of the day, that's what he's really trying to get at here. What's a
Uh,
quality life for me, for you, for everyone? And a quality life is understanding that you got to make the best of what you got. You
th-
got to be consistent.
there's something to be said for that statement. Like, most people are either pragmatists or idealists. Sometimes we flip between them, but generally you swing one way, right? Having a balance between those two is what makes you down to earth and brings people together. It's that
Mm-hmm.
center, it's that middle ground. It's
So
balance. It is
and it
quality.
it is quality, and it is, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that. As the readers or listeners out there might know, I love reading biographies. I mainly read biographies of really important, influential men, mostly presidents. And I would say that the consistency between all these threads of stories that I read, besides the relationships between the fathers and sons that are just ultimately really important in building the foundation of the man, is quality leadership is a balance between those two things that you just mentioned. Almost every single great leader in American history was both of those things. They were both an idealist and a pragmatist. Lincoln was an idealist and a pragmatist. Madison was an idealist and a pragmatist. Okay, this is what great leadership does. It brings people together because it can understand two different views of the world. It is that trinity. It is that third thing. It is this, the world is this thing, the world is that thing, but it is also both things.
As a reward, you don't have to read the other question.
What? Why? Do you have a question for me? I want a question.
Yes. Last question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. How does the trip act as a metaphor for discovering quality?
Man, that is a good question. I'll be fair with that. And to the viewers out there, a good question is one that makes you think so much. You have so much running through your mind, you can't get it out. You have to
Yeah.
like slow down. Um, so I mean, we've kind of talked about it. Like what is quality? And this trip, I think this trip, the purpose of this trip, this real purpose of this trip was to repair the relationship between Chris and his dad, right? I think Chris either consciously or not Chris, but Phaedrus either subconsciously or consciously knew that there was something. Remember they talked about the other guy brought his wife, but he brought his son. Why did he bring his son? And you learn through the book, they have this very good but strained relationship, and there's something wrong. And you also learn about quality a lot, right? Phaedrus is talking about this, but he's also telling a story about motorcycle maintenance and what it means to have quality maintenance and how important that is. And again, back to this, what is quality? It's consistency. It's analysis, but it's also emotional, right? And so here is an opportunity for Phaedrus and Chris to have some consistency together, right? In a long period of time, they're going to be together, have to talk, have to interact, have to work together, whatever, on this motorcycle trip. It is a space that is carved out for dad and son. And when it comes to relationships, that's a really important thing to do, is carve out space where people can feel comfortable to be themselves or to have difficult conversations, to talk about difficult things. We talked about it a little bit about, the motorcycle maintenance, and, Phaedrus is the type of guy who probably has a really clean shop. He knows where everything is. He's created an environment for gumption, right? That's what this trip is. This trip is constant. Yes, there are gumption traps on this trip, but it's almost like a gumption propellant. He's almost forced to deal with this problem that he has with his son, right? And he set himself on a path for a better quality relationship with his son. And by doing this, and I think that's ultimately the metaphor for, it's not just a metaphor, it's actually what happened. It's the purpose, right? This guy is a classical data analysis guy. He planned this, right? He planned having to deal with all these emotions that he doesn't want to deal with. He put himself in a position where he was forced to deal with them, and his son was forced to deal with them. And ultimately, again, I'm an optimist in this. I think that their relationship got stronger as a result of this trip. I think that that moment in California where he nearly broke, but then, was able to talk to his son about something that he'd never really been able to talk to his son about, lifted the weight off of that shoulder. It repaired the relationship. And I bet you, they had quality from then on forth.
Yes, I bet they did. The one thing I would add, just you say consistency. The way I was thinking about it is like steady attention to detail over time. But like,
Hmm.
was that definitionally consistency? And that applies for everything. Like you have to be consistent in writing, consistent in reading. Otherwise, these aren't habits or hobbies or careers.
Yeah. So speaking of, all right. So this is something that I learned is well, I'm very busy in life. I've got a lot of stuff going on. I'm running a nonprofit. I'm running a business. I've got a marriage. I've got a lot of kids. I've got soccer practice. I got track practice. And I went to go read this book and I read about 40 pages on Sunday. And Monday morning, I had a long drive ahead of me. So I went to go pop in the audiobook. I'm like, I'm going to knock out a couple chapters.
But
And
it's
then
not
I
the
found out
audiobook you think it is.
there's no audio. There's no audiobook. And so so typically, like, I read a lot of books and I will listen to a chapter here and there in the car. It's a strategy that I've used to keep me going. It avoids the
Mm,
gumption traps. It makes me feel it's a gumption propellant,
yeah.
if you will. But back in COVID days, I wasn't a reader prior to COVID. I had tried to read. I had read a few books with my wife. We kind of started doing that together as like personal improvement type things. And when COVID happened, I was like, there's so much I want to read. I'm going to like really read. And I became an excellent reader, like just crazy good at it. And I never really was. And everybody is so amazed at how fast that I read. And when I found out there was no audiobook and I knew I was going to have to read this whole thing in probably like 3 days, realistically, based on like the time that I had to
Yeah.
actually sit
Even though
down
you
and read.
started earlier than I did.
Right, right. Because like I knew that I had a whole bunch of things, like I had my daughter's field trip. I had all these things that were in my way of
Yep.
reading. And I looked at the calendar. I'm like, I've got basically 3 days to read this. And it's funny because, as you mentioned, it's like it's a habit. It's a habit that you build and you practice over time. But then the thing, it's not like my reading wasn't fast. It was, right? Because I still read
Mhm.
constantly. It's just that the the intensity for it, the thing that made me a really great reader was the fact that I just kept doing it. And I always tell myself I would finish a chapter and I feel done. And I'm like,
Mhm.
no, you got one more. It's like lifting weights. It's like you feel done after that first set, but you're like, no, I got one more. And then you just
Yep.
keep telling yourself that. And you keep telling yourself that, and you build more muscle and more muscle and more muscle. And boom. Well, I did that with reading endurance, right? I just kept telling myself, I got one more chapter in me. I got one more chapter in me. And before you know it, I read 400 pages in a day, right? And it's like, this is cool. And then it just became habit, right? It was just what I was doing and how I was doing it. But I kind of stepped away from it a little bit, especially this year with all the extra stuff. And so it kind of felt good to get back to that with this book. That might be part of why I like really love this book, is because it was reconnecting with something that I love, which is reading, that I've kind of like, at least for this year, has put as a secondary thing. I think I've only read like 10 books this year, which is like significantly less than last year.
Yeah.
So,
I'm on
it
track to
is,
be behind because of similar reasons.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
but yeah, I kind of went off of our question, but it's just a story that I wanted to tell
no,
about reading.
it's
It's
a
a
great
book
story. It
podcast.
applies. But for listeners out there, like when he says 400-page book, like if you were listening to audiobook at 1.0 times speed, that's like between 12 and 15 hours.
Yeah, but I
And
read at 3x speed.
yeah. It, so on this one, when I was listening to it in the car, I was using like a PDF and having AI read it to me. And every single time I got to conversations, it would take a very long pause in between them. And it drove me insane because it's like something, me just reading it, like, okay, the whole page is dialogue. I can read that in like 10 seconds. Easy.
Right. The
But
dialogue pages are
it
easy.
goes from like 10 seconds to like 3 minutes before you get to the end of them. Like, we just had a back and forth that in real time was so short. But I'm driving. I can't find the next page. So like, okay, I'll just skip it. At this point, I'll just skip it.
Yeah.
Gumption traps.
Exactly. Gumption
Gumption
traps.
traps.
This book was fantastic.
This was a fantastic book. I want to give it another read when I have enough headspace to really digest it. This is one of those books that it requires a reread to truly grasp the concepts in depth, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into uh impact lines or standout lines. I've got a few of them. And I kind of
Go
probably want
for
to
it.
talk a little bit.
I didn't capture any in particular. I would say
Uh,
like the whole second half of the book is a standout line if I had to give one.
so, I talked about a little bit, Chris and his or Phaedrus and the relationship he has with his son Chris, and he kind of hates himself. And this line really kind of says, "Flash of fear. That's what he wanted. He wants to hate me because I'm not him." And he's talking about his son here. He believes that his son wants to hate him, but I think really is that he hates himself. And it's not that Chris wants to hate him because he's not him. I think it's because he doesn't want him to be him. Phaedrus wants him to be somebody else besides him, and he wants to be his dad.
I believe there's a hashtag deep in there.
Hashtag deep. I have a line that I was going to read, but it's actually a remembered line from Thoreau. I highlighted it for a different reason. All right, hold on. This is a good one. I'm going to go to the front here. And when you look directly at an insane man, all you see is a reflection of your own knowledge that he's insane, which is not to see him at all. To see him, you must see what he saw, and when you are trying to see the vision of an insane man, an oblique route is the only way to come at it. Otherwise, your own opinions block the way. There is only one access to him that I can see as passable, and we still have ways to go. So I think this is revealing. I really, the part where when you look directly at an insane man, you just see the reflection of your own knowledge. Again, this is back to that, like, the perception that you see. Why are somebody doing doing this, the thing that they are doing, and what is the purpose behind it? What shaped that person? I talked about the layer in this book that didn't get peeled is we don't know the relationship between Phaedrus and his father that made him be this
Mhm.
way, that led him to be like Chris. Well, in this case, in the insane man, is you don't understand why he's insane, right? And he might not be insane. Maybe he's actually brilliant, right?
So
I think there's a lot to that.
we didn't get to this question, but I do think that the narrator dreads Phaedrus's like past Phaedrus's return because it's that what you just talked about. It's that fear, and it's because Phaedrus is so brilliant and unbalanced, and even at the time where he was at his peak and he was winning that argument with the chairman of the board of the thing and all that happy college stuff that I don't know much about. Like, he knew that he was on a path of self-destruction because of pure reason, and it almost willed it into existence in a way. Anyway,
No, I there was something that popped up in my head while you were saying that, and it escaped me.
self-destruction, pure reason, brilliant
Oh,
and unbalanced, me.
the fear, the fear. You talked about fear, and that goes back to that the last quote that I had. And again, it's like, what is the problem? What is the underlying tension in this book? It's between Phaedrus and himself. It's between It's about his parenting or who he is as a man and how he's shaping his son. And ultimately, he's living a life in fear. He's living a life in fear. And I think, you know, I think what would be a really great question for the author, were he still around, and I could ask i- is living a life of fear quality?
Or it's funny you ask that question. I was working on an essay earlier today um, about despair. But what is despair? It's fear of living, essentially.
Mm.
I don't really have a follow up to that, other than relation things. I must have been thinking about it subconsciously and pulled it out as despair, not just fear.
All right, I got another quote here, and this one is a little bit different. It's less on the relationship status, and it's more just like it's a actual great piece of advice. As I mentioned, Phaedrus is teaching a class, and he's trying to describe what quality is, and he's also talking about writing. And he says he's giving a piece of advice of like what to do when you're stuck when you're writing. Oh, it's so great. You're trying to think of what to say and what to say first at the same time, and that's too hard. So separate them out. Just make a list of all the things you want to say in any old order. And he's giving this instruction to Chris, his son. You know, he's trying to write a letter, I believe, to his mom, and he's stuck. Right? He doesn't know everything's jammed up at the beginning, right? I just mentioned a few minutes ago, you asked me a great question, and it was like there was so much stuff flowing through my head that I couldn't get it out right away, right? I had to sit there and order it and layer it in my head before I could start to talk about it. Right. And that's the exact piece of advice that he's giving here with writing. And I think it's so great because, especially as somebody who I'm late to the game when it comes to writing. I've always kind of tinkered with poetry in my life, but I didn't really start writing until I was in my 30s. And that I think was one of the biggest struggles that I had is getting started
Mhm.
because I had so much to say and I didn't know what to say first.
Yep,
And it was literally taking that and learning how to organize it and break it down, into smaller groups and
yep.
order it and layer it myself and then
I
it flows.
in a way, and you have to do all of that because you can do that 100 different ways. Like, what works for you doesn't necessarily work for me to keep that gumption engine rolling, so to speak. Because, like, for me, I'll just write a paragraph that's a bunch of nonsense, which is essentially ordering my thoughts. It's like, okay, here's all the words that I wanted to say. Let me actually write the thing I was gonna write.
Yeah. I'm the type of person that, like, I think about it a lot and I start to, like I kinda divide things in, and it's like, "Alright, what are the things that I really want to say in this thing that I'm about to say?"
Yep.
Right? And once I break it down into, like, 3 or 4 sentences, right? Then I literally will separate those out. I'll reorder them in the paragraphs that I think they should go, and then I'll just start to write. And sometimes as I write, I might change the order at some point in time. But, I just I need a starting point. Like I need a path. Like I
Yep.
carve myself a path and then I start to walk the path. And
That's
sometimes I want to change the path along the way. I change the
mhm,
path along the way, but there's always a way at that
mhm.
point.
Yep. That's the hardest part of writing is putting stuff on the page. Once you've done that, you can fix it, you can throw it away, you can change it, so on and so forth. But you have to get it there.
Right.
You have to get it there.
All right. This is another one. I think this is great. Another great piece of advice. He's talking about anxiety and the gumption trap. And he says, the best way to break the cycle, I think, is to work out your anxieties on paper. Read every book and magazine you can on the subject. Your anxiety makes this easy, and the more you read, the more you calm down. You should remember that it's peace of mind you're after and not just a fixed machine. And again, I think like the anxieties are all of the thoughts and fears and stresses that you carry that are in your head that you may or may not know how to deal with. And by reading, you learn about the world, different perspectives. You gain that data, that foundation of knowledge that you really need to make good decisions. And by writing it down, you start to order your thoughts, your anxieties, your stresses. And what you're able to do is find out that these actually aren't so bad. This isn't so hard. I can solve these problems. I can shave down that tippet. I can turn that wrench. I can fix that spark plug, right? I think,
If you can find the darn thing.
if you can find the darn thing.
On a motorcycle, it can't be that hard. My car, I think they're all on the bottom. Can't find them.
Well, he mentions that in the book is like he believes that you should work on your own motorcycle, but probably not your own car. They make it hard to work on your own car. And this is back in the 1970s or 80s, so it's way even worse now.
There's a solenoid I wanted to replace, and like by all accounts, it should be on top. Pretty sure it's underneath the engine. So you're gonna have to like remove the tire, get underneath there, and do all that. Luckily, just the hoses fix the problem. So
There you go.
don't have to pay $500 for labor.
All right.
That was the
That was
book.
it. That was my standout lines. That was the book.
That was the book. Those are great standout lines. I have to read it again to come up with standout lines because there's so many good ones. There's so many good ideas that I just didn't have processing power to process, which makes me sad. That being said, next month, new book, a little bit shorter, probably easier to process.
What is the next book?
The next book is a history of the world in 6 classes.
Oh,
This is like a big
nice.
history type of thing, and it's a great book. I think.
This is a big like turn for us. Like we go from this philosophical,
We go from Christianity to like philosophical fiction, nonfiction to history.
just like, but
then
like
we're
not just history, but history about like alcohol, about not alcohol per se, but beverages,
mostly
right? Like
alcohol and caffeine.
a niche. We're going to go to a history about niche, and we've been learning about these very broad topics about the world and Christianity and philosophy and all these things and relationships. And now we're going to go to these like,
Yep. And now
a
we're
little
going to
less emotionally taxing of a read, I bet you.
emotionally taxing, not as much, but putting society in perspective. Absolutely.
It's that data analysis, that foundational stuff that you'll be reading that'll help you understand the world around you just a little bit better.
It adds to the quality.
Well, that's all we have for now. Let us know in the comments what stuck out the most to you. We'd love to hear from you.
And for those tuning in on Spotify and Substack, please like and share.
For those on YouTube, kindly give us a thumbs up.
And you can check out the Substack version of this podcast for older episodes and future books we're looking at reading together. And you can find all links for What the Book at craigtstewart.com. With all that said, have a good one, folks.
Peace and love.